Let me ask the craziest question. Indulge me for a second. This is a
Compared
joke.
to what we've been talking about, like, okay, I
No,
gotta get my seatbelt on.
all of this is assigned. All of that, despite the caveats about armchair, I think is within the reach of science. Let me ask one that's kind of also within the reach of science, but as Joe likes to say, it's entirely possible, right? Um, is it possible that with these DMT trips, when you meet entities, is it possible that these entities are extraterrestrial life forms? Like our understanding of little green men with aliens that show up is totally off. I often think about this, like what would actual extraterrestrial intelligence look like? And my sense is it will look like very different from anything we can even begin to comprehend.
And how would it communicate?
And how would it communicate?
Yeah. Would it be necessarily spaceships with
Right.
interstellar travel, or
could it be communicating it through chemicals, through if there's a panpsychism situation, if there's something, not if, I almost for sure know we don't understand, a lot about the function of our mind in connection to the fabric of the physics in the universe. A lot of people seem to think we have theoretical physics pretty figured out. I have my doubts because I'm pretty sure it always feels like we have everything figured out until we don't.
right?
But
I mean, there's no grand unifying theory yet, right?
But
I mean,
even
that's
then,
been widely recognized.
we could be missing out. Like the concept of the universe just can be completely off. Like how many other universes are there? All those kinds of things. I mean, there's just the basic nature of information, the
time,
all of those things. Whether that's just like a thing we assign value to, or whether it's fundamental or not. That's whole Sean. I could talk to Sean Carroll forever about whether time is emergent or fundamental to reality. But is it possible that the entities we meet are actual alien life forms? Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, I do. and I've to some degree laid my cards out by identifying as a radical empiricist, and it's like, so the answer, is it possible? And I think, ultimately, if you're a good scientist, you got to say, now that's at the extremes, it's yes.
Yes.
And it might get more interesting when you're asked to guess about the probability of that. Is that a 1 in a million, 1 in a trillion, 1 in more than the number of atoms in the universe probability?
And as an empiricist, is like what is a good testable? Like, how would you know the answer to that question? Or how would you be able to validate it? I mean,
well, can you get some information that's verifiable, like information that about some other planet or some aspect, and gosh, it would be an interesting range, but what range of discovery that we can anticipate we're going to know within, whatever, a few years, next 5, 10, 20 years, and seeing if you can get that information now, and then over time it might be verified. The type of thing like, part of Einstein's work was ultimately verified not until decades and decades later, at least certain aspects through empirical observations.
But it's also possible that the alien beings have a very different value system and perception of the world, where all of this little capitalistic improvements that we're all after, like predicting the concept of predicting the future too, is like totally useless to other life forms that perhaps think in a much different way, maybe a more transcendent way. I don't know, but
so they wouldn't even sign the consent form to be a participant in our experiment.
They would not. Yeah. They would not, and they wouldn't even understand the nature of these experiments. I mean, that maybe it's purely in the realm of the consciousness thing that we talked about. So like communicating in a way that is totally different than the kinds of communication that we think of as on Earth. Like, what's the purpose of communication for us? For us humans, the purpose of communication is sharing ideas. It feels like converging, like it's the Dawkins like memes. It's like we're sharing ideas in order to figure out how to collaborate together to get food into our systems and procreate, and then like murder everybody in the neighboring tribe because they'll steal our food. Like, we are all about sharing ideas. Maybe it's possible to have another alien life form that's more about sharing experiences. Like, it's less about ideas. I don't know.
And maybe that'll be us in a few years. Like,
Yeah.
how could it not? Like, instead of explaining something laboriously to you, like having people describe the ineffable psychedelic experience,
Yeah.
like if we could record that and then get the Neuralink of 50 years from now, like, oh, just plug this into your,
Just transferring the
yeah, it's like, oh,
experiences.
now you feel what it's like. And like, in one sense, like, how could we not go there? And then
Yeah.
you get into the realm of, especially when you throw time into it, are the aliens us
Yeah.
in the future? Or even like a transcendental temporal, like the us beyond time.
Right.
Like, I don't know, like you get into this
We're all
realm and there's a
one.
lot of possibilities. Yeah. But I think, there's one psychedelic researcher who did high dose DMT research in the 90s who speculated that and there was a lot of alien encounter experiences, like maybe these are like entities from some other dimension, or
Yeah,
he labeled it as speculation, but
do you remember the name?
Oh, Rick Strassman,
Oh, Rick
who
Strassman.
did, the DMT work. He labeled it as speculation, but I think that, I think we'd be wise to kind of, it's always that balance between being empirically grounded and skeptical, but also not being, and I think in science, often we are too closed.
Yeah.
Which relates to, like, you're talking about Elon, like, in academia, it's like often, like, I think you're punished for thinking or even talking about 20 years from now because it's just so far removed from your next grant or for your next paper that it's easy pickings.
Yeah.
And, that you're not allowed to speculate. So
I think I'm a huge fan of, I think the best way, to me at least, to practice like science or to practice good engineering is to like do two things and just bounce off, like spend most of the time doing the rigor of the day-to-day of what can be accomplished now in the engineering space or in the science, like what can you construct an experiment around, do like that, the usual rigor of the scientific process. But then every once in a while, on a regular basis, to step outside and talk about aliens and consciousness. And we just walk along the line of things that are outside the reach of science currently. Free will, the illusion or the perception or the experience of free will, of anything, just the entirety of it, being able to travel in time through wormholes. It's like, it's really useful to do that, especially as a scientist. Like, if that's all you do, you go into a land where you're not actually able to think rigorously. There's something, at least to me, that if you just hop back and forth, you're able to, I think, do exactly the kind of injection of out of the box thinking to your regular day-to-day science that will ultimately lead to breakthroughs. But you have to be the good scientist most of the time.
And that's consistent with what I think the great scientists of history,
Yes.
like in most of the history, the greats, the Newtons and Einsteins. I mean, there was less of and this change, I think, as time marched on, but less of a separation between those realms.
Yeah.
It's like there's the inclination now for, it's like, as a scientist, and this is like, this is science, this is my work, and then like my inclination to say, oh, Lex, don't take me too seriously because this is my armchair. I'm not speaking as a scientist.
Yes.
And I'm bending over backwards to say, to divide that self. And maybe there's been that evolution, and that's, and like the greats like didn't see that. I mean, Newton, and you go back in time, and it's like that obviously like connects to then religion, especially if that is the predominant word where Newton, like how much time did he spend trying to like decode the Bible and whatnot, and then maybe that was a dead end. But it's like, if you really believe in that particular religion, and you're this mastermind and you're trying to figure things out, it's not like, oh, this is what my job description is and this is what the grant wants. It's like, no, I've got this limited time on the planet. I'm going to figure out as much stuff as possible. Nothing is off the table, and you're just putting it all together. So this is kind of, this trajectory is maybe related to the siloing in science, like, again, related to my, like, oh, I'm not a philosopher, going, whether you consider that a science or not empirical science, but like going to these different disciplines, like, the greats, didn't
Yeah.
observe the
Yeah.
boundaries didn't exist.
There's no
They didn't
boundaries.
observe them. Yeah.